The air in the Great Smoky Mountains always tasted different to me, thick with pine resin and the faint, earthy tang of moss-covered stones, laced with something indefinable, like the breath of secrets long buried under layers of leaf litter and time. My name is Adam Hale, and for most of my 38 years, I've made a precarious living chasing those secrets, or more accurately, chasing their shadows. I'm a folklorist by trade, though debunker is the label that sticks in polite conversation. Armed with a battered notebook, a digital recorder that captured more wind than whispers, and a skepticism honed sharper than any field knife, I traverse the backwoods of America, sifting truth from tall tale. The Jersey Devil? A sandhill crane with a bad attitude and better timing. The Mothman of Point Pleasant? A barn owl startled into flight by a bridge's rumble, its red eyes aglow of taillights on wet wings. Bigfoot sightings in the Pacific Northwest? Black bear cubs, upright and curious, their silhouettes distorted by dusk and desperation. Each expedition ended the same. An article for some niche magazine, a podcast episode that garnered a few hundred downloads, and a quiet satisfaction in peeling back the myth to reveal the mundane mechanism beneath. It paid the bills barely, and kept me moving. A nomad in cargo pants and hiking boots, my beat-up Subaru Forester rolling off is cluttered with topo maps, energy bars, and half-read ethnographies. Skepticism wasn't just my tool. It was my armor, forged in the fires of a childhood spent in a small Ohio town where my father spun yarns of haunted bridges to explain his bar tabs, and my mother dismissed him with a laugh and a broom to sweep away the ghost dust. I'd learned early. Stories were comfort food for the fearful, puzzles for the curious, but never portals to profound. The Yunwee Tsunsti were different, though I didn't know it then. I'd first heard of the Little People during a conference in Asheville, a panel on Appalachian folklore where a Cherokee elder named Solly, his name meaning fox in the old tongue, spoke in measured tones about the invisible layers of the world. They are not ghosts or goblins of your Halloween tales, he said, his voice gravelly from years of tobacco and truth-telling, eyes dark pools that seemed to hold the Smokies themselves. Yunwee Tsunsti are the children of the Nunahai, small ones who tend to balance. Knee-high to a man, cloaked in bark and moss, they heal the sick with songs that mend bone and spirit alike. But they are tricksters, too. Lead the lost deeper, the heart is proud. Guide the humble home with a path of light. To see them is to earn their notice. To seek them is to risk the forest's judgment. The room had murmured, academics jotting notes on cultural archetypes and survival narratives, but I felt a pull, a whisper in the pine-scented air of the conference hall that tugged at the edges of my armor. I'd spent weeks after that digging into the sources, James Mooney's Myth of the Cherokee from 1900, with meticulous transcriptions of oral histories, modern ethnographies dismissing the Little People as echoes of European fairy lore blended with native animism, online forums buzzing with blurry trail cam photos and hushed claims of small footprints near Klingman's Dome. It smelled like a debunk waiting to happen. Perhaps a troop of mischievous hikers leaving arrowheads as pranks or optical illusions born of heat haze and isolation. But Solly's words lingered, and when a grant from a skeptical foundation came through for investigating persistent native legends in the southern Appalachians, I packed my gear without a second thought. Preparation was ritual for me. The Subaru loaded with a 2-person tent rated for high winds, a MSR Whisperlight stove for boiling creek water, a Garmin GPS that had never failed me from the Everglades to the Tetons, and a stack of MREs that tasted like regret but kept you alive. I added a cultural sensitivity kit this time. Books on Cherokee history, a small pouch of tobacco for offerings to elders, a phrase book with phrases like Watto for thank you, and do YVYUSD for I respect your ways. Skepticism demanded respect. It was the scalpel, not the sledgehammer. I drove south from Ohio in late October. The leaves ablaze of crimson and gold that carpeted the highways like spilled blood, the radio fading to static as the signal dipped into the folds of the mountains. The Qualla boundary, the Cherokee Nation's eastern band homeland, unfolded like a quilt of history stitched from trauma and resilience. Rolling ridges cloaked in hardwood forests, valleys cradling log cabins and tourist traps, selling dream catchers made in China. I checked into a no-frills motel in Cherokee, the kind with thin walls and a neon sign that buzzed vacancy like a persistent fly, and spent the first days building bridges. Elders were cautious. The trail of tear scars ran deep, generations of stories stolen or twisted by outsiders with notebooks and good intentions. I attended a stomp dance at the Oconaluftee Indian village, the drums thundering like the mountain's heartbeat, feet stamping earth in rhythms that echoed ancestors' steps. Over coffee at a roadside cafe, I shared my father's silly tales, earning a chuckle from an Annie named Galena, her silver braids framing a face lined with laughter and loss. You chase shadows, Adam. The little people don't hide from those who listen first. It took 3 days of patient conversation, sitting on porches with mugs of chicory coffee, listening to stories of the Nunahai's great warriors and the Yunwee Sunstee's playful mischief. Before Tsali, the elder from the conference, relented. We met at his cabin on the edge of the boundary, a low-slung structure of river rock and cedar with a wood stove puffing smoke like a dragon at rest. He was older than he looked in Asheville, his frame wiry under a flannel shirt, hands gnarled as oak roots from years of carving flutes that sang the wind song. The valley you seek is called Nuna Dal Tsuni, the place where the little people dance, he said, tracing a finger over a hand-drawn map, yellow with age, the lines winding into a remote hollow deep in the park's backcountry. But hear me, seeker, they are not for proving. Go with tobacco for thanks, cornmeal for sharing. Speak no demands, only questions of the heart. And if they show, remember, respect the unseen, or the forest forgets you. I nodded, pocketing the map with reverence, the tobacco pouch heavy in my pack like a talisman borrowed from another faith. Skepticism whispered optical illusion, group hallucination from isolation, but respect silenced it. This wasn't Jersey pine. This was sacred ground. I filed permits with the Park Service, warning of extended solo research, and hit the trail at dawn the next day. The Subaru left at a trailhead lot where rangers eyed my gear with a weary look of those who'd fished one too many overprepared tourists from a rhododendron thicket. The first leg was a slog, 8 miles of switchbacks climbing from 2,000 feet to over 4,000. The air thinning to a crisp bite that burned my lungs, the pack digging straps into shoulders like insistent fingers. The Smokies were old mountains worn smooth by eons, their ridges folding into one another like the pleats of an ancient skirt, hardwood canopies arching overhead in a cathedral of green and gold, sunlight dappling the forest floor mosaics that shifted with every step. I made camp by noon at a site marked on the topo, a flat shelf overlooking creek that chuckled over polished stones, the water so clear I could see trout darting like silver arrows. Setup was efficient. Tent staked against wind gusts that whispered to the hollies, stove primed for boiling, journal open to log the mundane, the chirp of Carolina wrens, the rustle of squirrels hoarding acorns like secrets. Skepticism held firm as the afternoon waned, the forest a symphony of ordinary wonders, a pileated woodpecker hammering a snag like a blacksmith on anvil, ferns unfurling and fiddleheads that begged to be foraged, the distant bugle of an elk testing the rut. I hiked a side loop, recorder running to capture ambient folklore, wind through laurel thickets that sounded eerily like distant flutes, leaves rustling in patterns that mimicked footsteps too light for deer. Dinner was rehydrated chili that steamed in the chill, journal filled with notes, no anomalies. Locals' tales likely coping mechanism for isolation/hardship. Arrowheads? Artifacts from pre-contact sites, not gifts. Bed by 9. The tent a cocoon against the night's drop to 40 degrees. Sleep coming easy under the patter of acorns on nylon. Day 2 dawned misty. The sun had diffused glow behind veils of fog that clung to the valleys like reluctant ghosts, the trail descending into a rhododendron hell, a tunnel of leathery leaves and twisted branches that snagged a pack and pant leg, the air humid and close, scented with damp earth and the faint rot of fallen blooms. My pace slowed, sweat beating despite the chill, the GPS chirping coordinates that placed me on track for the valley's mouth by dusk. Lunch at an overlook. Peanut butter on tortillas overlooking a sea of ridges fading to blue haze, the notebook filling with sketches of cloud formations that resembled small figures dancing. Pareidolia, I noted, brain seeking patterns in chaos. The afternoon brought the first twinge of unease, the sense of being paralleled, as if the trail had a shadow path just out of sight, faint giggles on the wind that could have been jays or imagination. I shook it off, recorder capturing the anomaly for later analysis. Static-laced bird song, nothing more. Camp that night was by a larger creek, the water singing over cascades that glowed in the headlamp's beam, the sight of mossy flat ringed by hemlocks whose trunks rose straight as flutes to a canopy that filtered moonlight to silver dust. I laid out my knife on a flat stone by the fire ring, habit from bare country, steel gleaming as a deterrent, while gathering tinder from the duff, dry twigs snapping like small bones underfoot. The fire caught quick, flames licking up to warm the chill that settled with the dark, stars pricking the gaps in the branches like eyes curious and cold. Dinner was ramen with added jerky for protein, the broth steaming visions in the bowl. Journal open to log the day's banalities. Trail erosion moderate. No human sign since trailhead. Auditory illusions possible from echo-off ridges. When I turned back from stacking wood, the knife was gone. The stone bare, no glint of steel in the firelight, no scuff in the dirt to suggest it had rolled. I swept the beam of my headlamp in arcs, heart picking up a notch. Lost gear was a hiker's nightmare, a domino to disaster. Minutes stretched to 10, the search frantic now, probing under logs and into the creek's shallows where the water ran cold over toes. Nothing. Then, in the exact center of the stone where the knife had lain, a small object caught the light. A perfect arrowhead, obsidian black and finely chipped, no larger than a thumbnail, warm to the touch as if heated by the fire hadn't seen. I turned it over, the edges razor sharp, the pointed needle's kiss, craftsmanship that spoke of hands patient and precise, predating any tourist trinket. A prank? Out here, miles from the nearest road, with no footprints but my own, unlikely bordered on impossible. I pocketed it, skepticism fracturing like thin ice, the weight a small stone in my chest as I banked the fire and crawled into the tent, the zippers rasped loud in the sudden quiet. Sleep evaded, the arrowhead's warmth seeping through denim, like a heartbeat not my own. The woods, silent animal ear hummed faint, a melodic vibration, like stone chimes submerged in the creek, notes rising and falling in a scale that tug at memory, ancient as the mountains themselves. It came from everywhere and nowhere, directionless as fog, weaving through the tent walls to prickle skin and raise hairs. My headlamp flicked on, beam stabbing the nylon, but the light caught only shifting shadows that danced too low for branches, too nimble for wind. Watched, not with the prickling malice of predator's gaze, but with a patient, ancient curiosity, as if the forest itself had paused to appraise the intruder. I lay still, breath shallow, recorder clutched but silent, capturing felt profane, like photographing a prayer. The humming swelled then faded, leaving the night to the creek's chuckle and the occasional snap of cooling embers, sleep claiming me in fits, dreams of small hands stacking stones into rings that encircled the world. Dawn broke with clarity that mocked the night's unease, sunlight spearing the tent to banish shadows, birdsong resuming, as if on cue, a chorus of towhees and thrushes that drowned the memory of chimes. Coffee boiled on the stove, black and strong to chase the fog from brain. The arrowhead examined in daylight. Flawless. The obsidian source from Carolina quarries long abandoned, no modern tool marks marring the flake. Local collectors drop, lost artifact. The skeptic scribbled, but the warmth lingered, a subtle pulse against palm. Pack up efficient. Trail resuming its descent into the valley, the path narrowing to single file, roots snaking like veins across the dirt, ferns brushing knees like whispering confidants. The morning's hike was unremarkable on surface. 3 miles of moderate grade, elevation dropping to 3,000 feet, the forest transitioning from high-elevation spruce to oak hickory dominated, sunlight dappling the understory in gold coins. But the unease clung, a low-grade fever. The trail seeming to loop subtly, landmarks repeating. A bent birch here, a mossy boulder there, that GPS insisted were new. Birds fell silent in waves, as if passing a bat into the wind, and once, in a sunbreak, my shadow on the path forked, a smaller silhouette branching left into underbrush. Gone when I blinked. Dehydration hallucination. Noted, swigging from the Nalgene, but the arrowhead in the side pocket bumped thigh like a reminder. By noon, the valley mouth yawned open, a hidden hollow cradled by ridges that folded like protective hands, the creek widening to a shallow ford where minnows darted silver in shallows. Camp set up by early afternoon, the site a natural amphitheater ringed by laurel thickets, the ground soft with duff that muffled steps. Skepticism rallied. No anomalies beyond knife swap, likely self-induced misplacement, arrowhead pocketed earlier subconsciously, journal filled with observations, the hum of bees and goldenrod, the scent of wild ginger crushed under boot, but the eyes felt on me still, patient, waiting for the mask to slip. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the western ridge, painting the hollow in strokes of amber and rose, I performed Sally's offering, a pinch of tobacco scattered at the 4 directions, cornmeal dusted in a circle around the fire ring, murmured thanks in English and halting Cherokee for the land's welcome. The words felt awkward on tongue, a skeptic reciting verse from a borrowed scripture, but the forest seemed to lean in, leaves stilling as if listening. Dinner was trout from the creek, filleted clean on the stone, the flesh flaky and sweet over flames that crackled companionable. The knife, back in sheath, felt heavier, its balance off by the ghost of absence. Night fell swift in the hollow, stars wheeling overhead in a dome unmarred by city glow, the Milky Way a river light that mocked the creek's earthly flow. The humming returned with dusk, stronger now, a chorus of chimes layered in harmonies that evoked flutes carved from river cane, the melody weaving through the trees like smoke from a fire. It rose and fell, directionless yet enveloping, tugging at ears and heart with a pull that was both invitation and warning. Headlamp beams swept arcs through the dark, catching glints of dew on ferns and the occasional flash of animal eyes. Rabbit red, owl yellow, but the shadows shifted low, too small for man or beast, agile impressions darting at periphery like minnows fleeing light. Watched, yes, curious, appraising, the gaze ancient as the granite underfoot, patient as the river carving canyons. Panic clawed fainted throat, the hiker's true foe, but I breathed it down, recorder running silent in lap. This was data, not dread. The melody swelled to a crescendo that hummed in bones, then faded to whispers, leaving the night to cricket chirps and the fire's pop. Sleep came uneasy, dreams of small hands offering arrowheads that multiplied in palm, turned to stones that weighed down until I sank into mossy earth, voices chiming see, hear, respect in rounds that echoed the melody. Day 3 dawned with fog thick as milk, the valley shrouded in white that muffled sound and sight, the creek a ghost gurgle under the mist. GPS fizz static on boot up, coordinates jumping like fleas, the battery draining to half in minutes despite full charge at dawn. Skepticism cracked. Interference from ridges? Solar flare anomaly? Compass spun lazy circles, north suggestion rather than command. The sun's position veiled and wrong, arcing too slow for midday. Panic bloomed full then, sweat cold on skin despite the humid cling. The trail vanishing into fog that pressed close. Disorienting turns into loops that brought me back to the same bent birch, mossy boulder mocking with familiarity. Hours blurred, the pack chafing shoulders raw, water bottle half empty. The arrowhead a talisman clutched in fist, its warmth a small sun against palm. Stumbled through a thicket of blackberry brambles that snagged like insistent fingers, tearing denim and drawing blood in thin lines that burned, emerging into a small, circular clearing that defied the map. No notation in topo lines, no GPS ping to place it. The ground was carpeted in moss soft as velvet, ringed by ferns that stood sentinel, and in the center, a circle of tiny stones stacked meticulous, no larger than thimbles, forming a ring the size of a dinner plate. Inside, a fresh blackberry, juice beating dark as blood, a beetle wing shimmering iridescent blue, veined like stained glass, and breath seizing. My missing knife, blade clean and sheathed, laid reverent as an altarpiece. Sat heavy on knees, fog swirling like breath in the earth. The clearing a pocket of stillness with a hum lingered faint, a baseline vibration under skin. That's when I saw them, not direct but periphery. Fleeting movements among fronds, small shapes the color of bark and moss, agile as squirrels but graceful, darting with purpose that wasn't flight. Impressions only, a glint of eye like polished acorn, a hand small as child's lifting a leaf like a banner, but the feeling pressed in, not sound but thought, blooming in mind like ink in water. You are looking, but you do not see. You listen, but you do not hear. Respect the layer, or the forest layers you deeper. The words weren't mine, yet they fit seamless, a voice neither male nor female, ancient as the mountains, amused and stern in equal measure. Skepticism shattered then, notebook forgotten in pack, recorder silent. This wasn't debunked, but revelation, the world tilting to reveal a stratum-eyed walk blind atop. Closed eyes, breath steadying to match the creek's rhythm, let go the need to investigate, document, prove. The scalpel dropped, the armor shed. Sat back against a great oak, bark rough as braille under palms, roots cradling spine like elders' hands. Listen not to sounds of breath of forest. Wind through leaves a sigh of ages, soil teeming with life unseen, the hum now a song, layer harmonies of chimes and flutes that wove story without words, of balance kept by small hands, of intruders led astray by pride, guided home by humility. Time dissolved, minutes or hours, the fog lifting slow to reveal sun high and true, the clearing unchanged with the lost feeling evaporated like dew. A path materialized, narrow and clear, fern fringe and leading from the stone ring into woods that parted welcoming, my knife snug in sheath as if never gone, arrowhead pocket warm. Followed it, steps light on duff that cushioned like moss carpet, the trail unspooling straight to a familiar junction, GPS chirping coordinates sane, battery full as dawn. No photos, no recordings, just the arrowhead, a weight of wonder in pocket, and memory defying logic's ledger. Hiked out that day, miles melting under renewed stride, the valley receding like a dream half remembered, the Smokies folding back to tourist trails and ranger stations. Skepticism reborn, not shattered but refined. Myths weren't lies to unmask, but truths veiled for the unworthy. Realities layer beyond proof's crude grasp. The Cherokee hadn't spun tales for sport. They'd shared the world's hidden pleats, invitations to those who listened before leaping. Back in Cherokee, Solly waited at the cafe, his smile knowing as I slid the tobacco pouch across table, arrowhead placed gentle beside. "You saw?" he asked, no surprise in tone, only quiet affirmation. Not with eyes. I replied, voice rough from disuse, with something else. He nodded, pocketing the arrowhead with reverence. "Watto, Adam." The little people thanked the listener. Go now, carry the respect, not the proof. Drove north that night. The Subaru's headlights carving tunnels through dark, the mountains shrinking in mirrors to folds of night. The notebook stayed blank on passenger seat, stories untold. The recorder archived as ambient wind. Hiked still, legend pursued, but no longer to conquer. Placed offerings now. Pebbles shiny on log, honeycomb sweet on stump. A thank you silent, acknowledgement of layers unseen. And sometimes, in deep mountain quiet, light right, a flicker corner eye, ancient amusement on wind. You see a little now. Hear more. The greatest mystery solved. Some aren't for solving, only respecting. The world unfolds when you stop folding it to fit your map. The drive back from Kuala Boundary unfolded like a slow exhale. The Subaru's tires humming over asphalt that wound out of mountains like a thread unspooling from a loom. The ridges receded in the rearview mirror, their folds softening to blue haze under a sky streaked with the last gold of October. The arrowhead in my pocket a constant, subtle pressure against my thigh. A talisman or a tether? I couldn't decide. My hands gripped the wheel tighter than necessary, knuckles pale against the black vinyl. The road's curves mirroring the twists in my mind. Skepticism, that old companion, had fractured in the clearing, leaving shards that cut with every replay of the memory. The stone ring's precision, the berry's improbable freshness, the thought voice blooming unbidden in my head, like a flower unfurling in time-lapse. You are looking, but you do not see. It wasn't hallucination, dehydration, or isolation-induced illusion. I knew that with the certainty of a man who's chased shadows long enough to recognize their weight. This was something else, a layer peeled back to reveal not emptiness, but fullness, a world breathing parallel to mine. The motel in Cherokee loomed familiar under sodium lights that buzzed like persistent doubts, the neon vacancy sign flickering as if winking at my return. I checked in for one more night. The clerk, a young woman with braids threaded with turquoise beads, glancing at my mud-caked boots and the faint wildness in my eyes without comment, sliding the key across the counter with a murmur of rough trails up there. I nodded, words caught behind teeth, and retreated to a room that smelled of industrial cleaner and faint mildew, the bed sagging under my pack like an old friend bearing too much. Shower first, scalding water stripping the grime of 3 days, sweat-salted skin, bramble scratches stinging like accusations, the creek's chill lingering in my bones. Clean but not cleansed, I sat on the bed's edge, notebook open but pen idle, the blank page mocking the emptiness where evidence should have been. No photos of the clearing, no audio of the humming. My recorder had captured only static and wind, as if the forest had edited itself out. The arrowhead lay on a nightstand, obsidian catching the lamp's glow in facets that seemed to shift when unobserved, its warmth a gentle pulse like a sleeping heart. Sleep came in fragments, dreams replaying periphery glimpses, small forms darting moss-cloaked, eyes like polished acorns glinting curiosity, hands no larger than a child's lifting fronds like veils. Woke sweating to the motel's hum, the clock reading 3:17 a.m., the date October 29th blurring in red digits. Outside, the parking lot was a pool of sodium yellow, mountains black silhouettes against a starless sky. But in the dream's echo, the humming lingered faint, a melody that tugged at the edges of hearing like a half-remembered song. Rose, dressed in yesterday's clothes stiff with trail dust, and drove to the cafe where Sally held court at dawn, the place a low-slung diner with formica counters scarred by generations of plates, coffee percolating strong and black as the river silt. He was there as promised, at a corner booth overlooking the lot, his flannel shirt rumpled from sleep, a mug steaming before him like an oracle's smoke. His eyes, dark and deep-set, fixed on me as I slid into the opposite seat, the arrowhead placed gentle on the table between us, obsidian nestling in the scar like it belonged. No words at first. The waitress poured my coffee without asking, her braids swinging as she retreated, leaving us to the quiet clink of spoon on porcelain. Sally's finger traced the arrowhead's edge, slow as a storyteller pacing a tale, his touch reverent, the stone warming under his palm like greeting an old kin. "You saw," he said finally, not question but affirmation, voice gravel low, carrying the weight of ridges folded upon ridges. "Not saw exactly," I replied, coffee bitter on tongue, chasing the dream's residue, glimpsed, edges, movements in the ferns, and felt a voice, not sound, thoughts like wind shaping words. The clearing, the ring, the knife returned. It wasn't prank or illusion, but proof? Still none. My gear caught nothing. He nodded, slow, the lines on his face deepening like crevices in bark, whether by stories told and untold. Proof is the white man's chain, Adam. Binds what cannot be bound. The young wheat sunsteed do not pose for your machines. They dance in spaces between. You offer tobacco, meal, respect before seeking. That opened the layer. The arrowhead, not gift but exchange. Carry it, but do not hoard. It hums with their song, calls if you listen wrong. Questions bubble. How many layers? Why showed outsiders? What heals they speak of in the tales? But rule-like wisdom held tongue. Sally's map had been warning enough. The forest judgment swift for the proud. Instead, I asked the voice. It said, respect the layer or the forest layers you deeper. What does that mean for one who listens but does not yet hear? His chuckle was dry as autumn leaves, eyes crinkling with amusement ancient as the Nunnahi themselves. Means the world is onion, peel to tears if you rush. Young wheat sunsteed are the skin beneath skin. Keepers of balance, healers when harmony calls, tricksters when greed tips the scale. Lead lost hunters to water if heart pure, or circle them in illusions till pride breaks. You were lost. They showed the ring, the path. Deeper layers? Nunnahi warriors, great ones who fight the dark under earth. But to hear them, you must unlearn the hunt. Go back, Adam, not to chase, but to sit. Offer again, but this time, your story, no notebook, no recorder. Let the forest tell its own. We spoke to the cafe filled with locals. Farmers in overalls nursing eggs and grits, tourists snapping photos of fry bread stacks. Sally's words weaving a tapestry lore. Tales of young wheat sunsteed mending a child's broken leg with songs that knit bone overnight, leading a lost elder home through blizzards with lights like fireflies in snow, warnings of seekers who demanded sight, vanishing into hollows that swallowed whole. Paid the bill, leaving extra for the waitress, and hugged Sally goodbye. His frame solid as oak despite years, the arrowhead back in pocket like a compass recalibrated. Drove to Asheville that day, the mountains unfolding to Piedmont plains. The conference grant report drafted in a coffee shop with laptop battery dying slow as resolve. Expedition yields cultural insights, no empirical evidence of anomalous phenomena. Recommend further ethnographic study. Sent. The words tasting ash, skepticism shell cracked but not discarded. Truth now held dualities. Mrs. Maps of realities uncharted. Crashed at a friend's couch. The urban hum of shock after forest breath. Nights played by humming that no white noise app drowned. Dreams of stone rings expanding to encircle the globe. Small hands stacking worlds. November brought freelance gigs. Podcasts on Appalachian ghosts. Articles for skeptic sites on the psychology of fairy sightings. But the pull lingered. The arrow had a constant companion on keychain, warming at odd moments like a sixth sense stirring. Emails from Sally arrived sporadic, forwarded through a university contact. Hollow calls again. Listen first. Friends notice a change. Quieter at bars, sketches and margins turn into ferns and spirals. Hikes solo and longer. You look like you saw God in the woods. One joked over beers, and I laughed, but the word stuck. The young wheat sunsteed not gods but guardians, layers revealing humility's reward. By December, the grant's follow-up loomed. A presentation at the Asheville conference, slides prepped with maps and notes, but heart not in the debunk. Drove back to Kuala mid-month. Snow dusting ridges like powdered sugar on gingerbread. The motel a welcome chill after city clamor. Sally met me at the cabin. Stove roaring welcome, cornmeal mush steaming on the table. "You returned," he said, no surprise, pouring coffee strong as resolve. "The lair tugs?" Nodded. Arrowhead on table pulsing faint. "Not approve. To sit, as you said." He smiled, lines deepening the canyons of approval. "Good. The hollow waits, but winter thins the veil. Cold makes 'em bold. Songs clearer. Take this." Handed a small flute, river cane smooth as skin, holes drilled precise. Play if lost. Their melody answers, guides ear that hears. Packed light this time. No recorder, notebook left in glove box. Only knife, tobacco, meal, the flute tucked in belt. Trailhead under fresh snow, boots crunching virgin white. The path to the valley muffled to whispers, ridges blanketed in hush. First night camp by the creek frozen to glass. Fire crackling defiance, offering scattered in directions that felt right. North by the flute's first tentative note. A breathy wail that echoed the humming, drawing a response faint from the dark. Chimes answering reed. Day 2 brought the fog again, thicker with cold, GPS silent as stone, compass spinning lazy, lost deliberate, the forest layering deeper, trees closing ranks like sentinels testing intent. Panic clawed brief, but breath steadied the flute's rhythm, fingers finding holes by feel, the melody emerging halting. A simple tune from Sally's lesson, wind through cane evoking the chime song. The hum answered, swelling around me like fog made music, direction emerging in harmony's pull. Left of the birch, right through laurel, the path unspooling under feet that no longer stumbled. The clearing waited unchanged, stone ring dusted snow, ferns bowed under white but stirring as I approached, the thought voice blooming warmer. "You return, not to take, but to give." The lair opens. Sat cross-legged in center, eyes closed, flute to lips, playing the tune till fingers numbed, the song weaving with a hum into duet, forest breath sinking to reed and chime. Time dissolved again, minutes to hours, the cold forgotten in the melody's embrace, visions flickering behind lids. Small forms circling the ring, moss-cloaked and bark-veined, eyes acorn bright with amusement, hands offering berries at thought and palm, wings of beetles unfolding to rainbows and snow. Open eyes, the sun low but true, the path clear and leading out, but lingered, scattering cornmeal and thanks, a story shared aloud. Now hunts past, but father's yarns debunked gentle, mother's broom sweeping doubt to growth. The voice returned, layered now with individual tones, child-high giggle, elder rumble. Stories are seeds, Adam. Plant them, let grow. We hear all layers. Hiked out with flute humming in pack, the valley releasing reluctant, ridges parting to trailhead where Subaru waited snow dusted. Sally at cafe next morn. Flute returned with thanks, his nod profound. You heard. The young-weed Sunsty sing of you now, a listener who unlearned the chase. January thawed me back to Ohio, city lights harsh after mountain dark. Freelance surging with tales reframed, not debunks, but dialogues, podcasts shifting to whispers of the unseen, with guests like Sally via Zoom, his voice crackling wisdom across wires. The Arrowhead stayed on keychain, warming at trailheads nationwide, offerings left on logs from Adirondacks to Ozarks, pebble or honeycomb. Thank you, silent. Skepticism evolved. Scalpel to lens, myths maps to mysteries respected, not conquered. Encounters multiplied subtle. A flicker in Ozark hollies, chime on Appalachian breeze, thought voice in Pacific fog. Layers endless, listener, respect and see. The greatest truth. Some worlds reveal when you cease revealing them, the unseen a gift for the ear that quiets. The months following my return from Kuala Boundary blurred into a tapestry of half-measures and lingering echoes. The arrowhead on my keychain a constant companion that warmed at the most inopportune moments, like during a late-night podcast recording in my cramped Ohio apartment, when a hum of city traffic outside the window would suddenly sync with a faint chime in my memory, pulling my focus from the microphone to the periphery shadows on the wall. My life, once a linear path of expeditions and exposés, had forked into something more labyrinthine. Skepticism no longer a blunt instrument, but a lens refracting light into prisms of possibility. Freelance work sustained me. Articles for Skeptical Inquirer reframed as explorations in perceptual folklore, podcasts shifting from outright dismissals to dialogues that honored the storyteller's intent. But the pull of the Smokies was a tide I couldn't ignore, rising with each full moon that swelled fat and silver over the Midwest plains, its light filtering through blinds to dance on the arrowhead, like an invitation unspoken. January thawed into February with brutality that mirrored my internal churn, snowdrifts piling against the apartment building like the forest's judgment deferred, the heating system groaning in protest as if echoing the gorge's rumble. I spent evenings poring over Tsali's map, the hand-drawn lines now creased from unfolding, the valleys hollow marked with symbols I couldn't decipher, spirals for paths unseen, dots like eyes watching from the ridges. Emails from Tsali arrived sporadically, forwarded through university contact in Asheville, his words sparse but weighted. The layer thins in winter's grip, songs clearer but cold bites deeper. Return at the hum calls, but bring no chains of proof. The flute he'd given me sat on the nightstand, cane smooth as skin under fingers that traced the holes, the first notes emerging halting when I blew, a breathy wail that filled the room with reed and wind, drawing a response from the radiator's hiss or the neighbor's muffled TV, but never the chime I craved. Friends noticed a shift, their concern masked in jest over beers at the local dive, the kind of place with sticky floors and neon signs promising cold beer, hot wings. "You look like you got religion in the woods, Hale," Mark said, my old college roommate, nursing a pint with foam clinging to his mustache like frost on a branch. One too many sips from Kool-Aid? Or did Bigfoot finally convert you? Laughter rippled around the table, but mine was thin, the arrowhead burning in my pocket like a coal, the story of the clearing spilling out in fragments, not the full revelation, but enough to earn raised eyebrows and a chorus of bullshit softened to cool story, bro. Mark clapped my shoulder, eyes serious behind the humor. Whatever it was, don't let it eat you. World's got enough ghosts without you chasing him home. His word stuck, a barb in the flesh of my resolve, but the hum called relentless, a melody weaving through traffic noise and winter wind, tugging me south again by mid-February. The Subaru 8 miles like hunger, Ohio to Tennessee in a blur of gray interstates and rest stops, where truckers swapped yarns of road phantoms over coffee that tasted of asphalt. Asheville welcomed with its bohemian hum, buskers strumming mandolins on street corners, craft breweries spilling laughter into fog-shrouded nights. But I bypassed the conference this time, no slides or panels, driving straight to Kuala under skies heavy with promise of snow. Tsali's cabin stood steadfast, smoke curling from the chimney like a beckoning finger, the elder at his workbench carving a new flute, shavings curling on the floor like golden scrolls. "You came," he said, no surprise in his gravel voice, setting aside the knife with a rasp on whetstone. "The song calls loud in you." Nodded, pack dropping with a thud, the flute from December placed beside his work like an offering returned. Not to chase, to sit as you taught. The lair, it's in the dreams now, humming when I wake. The arrowhead warms at night, like it's waiting. His eyes, deep set and knowing, fixed on the keychain stone, then back to me, a smile cracking the lines of his face like sunlight on bark. Good. Winter's veil is thinnest now. Cold strips the leaves, reveals the bones. The young wheat, sunsteam moved freer. their dances leaving prints in snow that melt by noon. But beware. The Nunahai watch close in frost, great ones who guard the deep, play the flute if lost. It answers their reed, guides the humble. We spoke through the afternoon, stove crackling warmth against the chill seeping through chinks in the logs. Solly sharing tales over mugs of chicory brew that tasted of earth and endurance. Stories of young wheat Sunstee mending a logger's crushed leg with songs that knit bone overnight. The man waking to whistles in the wind carrying melody. Of lost children led home through blizzards by lights like fireflies dancing in flakes. The little ones giggling as guardians. Warnings threaded through. Seekers who demanded sight, vanishing into hollows that swallowed voices and footsteps, emerging changed or not at all, eyes too wide with what they glimpsed. Respect is the key, Adam, he said, carving a final hole in the flute with precision born of decades. Not proof. Play this one if the hum swells. It carries my breath, calls kin, packed light for the return. The new flute tucked in belt, tobacco and cornmeal refreshed from the stores, knife sheath at hip, no recorder or notebook to chain the moment, trailhead under fresh powder, snow muffling the world to whispers, boots crunching virgin white that sparkled diamond under weak sun. The path to the valley descended slow, ridges blanketed in hush, the air crisp as new linen, scented with pine and the faint, clean bite of ice. First camp by the creek frozen to translucent panes. Fire ring cleared of snow with booted sweeps. Flames leaping defiant to warm numb fingers. Offerings scattered in directions felt rather than seen. Nor by the flute's first note. A breathy call that echoed the humming, drawing response faint from dark. Chimes answering reed, layered in harmony that tug heartstrings. Night fell swift. Stars wheeling overhead in icy brilliance. The Milky Way a frozen river arching the dome, Orion's belt a line of sentinels watching the hollow. The humming returned with dusk, stronger and cold, a chorus of stone chimes submerged in frozen creek, notes rising crystalline, weaving through trees like frost on branches. Headlamp beams swept arcs, catching glints of ice on laurel but shadows low and nimble, impressions darting periphery. Small forms moss-cloaked, agile as wind through reeds. Watch the curiosity patient, the gaze ancient, appraising the listener returned. Flute to lips, fingers chill but steady, the melody emerging pure, a simple tune Solly taught. Wind through cane evoking the chime song, notes blending with humming to duet that filled the clearing unbidden. The forest leaning in, snowflakes pausing mid-fall as if listening. Time dissolved in the music, minutes to hours, cold forgotten in melody's embrace, visions flickering behind closed lids. Young wheat Sunstee circling fire's glow, knee-high figures bark-veined and leaf-crowned, eyes acorn bright with joy, hands clapping rhythm that synced flute and chime, dances weaving patterns in snow that glowed phosphorescent, laughter tinkled like bells, not mocking but welcoming, a child-high giggle blending elder rumble, thought voice blooming warm. You play our song, listener. The lair welcomes the one who gives breath, not blade. The flute warmed in hands, reed vibrating with harmonies not mine. The dance swelling to include shadows that brush knees like fern fronds, small touches light as snow, conveying amusement and approval. Open eyes to fire low but steady, the clearing ring by prints tiny and precise. Toad heel no larger than thumb, melting slow in heat, the path out clear under moon that hung full in silver, illuminating way like daytime. Followed it, flute tucked away humming residual, steps light on crust that crunch like applause, valley releasing with sigh of wind through pines. Trailhead by dawn, Subaru dusted but waiting, the engine turning over with growl that echoed the night's duet. Solly at cabin next morn, stove roaring, mush steaming, his gnaw profound as I placed the flute beside his work. You heard full, the young we sing of the player now, a man who unlearned proof for song. Words spilled then, the night's vision shared in fragments, dances in snow, laughter like bells, the welcome warm as hearth. He listened, eyes closed, carving pause, then open with smile that cracked winter's grip. Watto, Adam. They chose to show because you chose to play. The layer is onion, but you peel with respect. Now the world sings back. Drove north that week. Mountains folding plains. The flute's absent a hollow and belt, but melody lingering in ears. Dreams now invitations rather than haunts. Ohio welcome with slush and salt trucks. Apartment a cage after forest breath. But freelance bloomed. Podcast on the music of the unseen. Guests like Sally via crackly line. His voice weaving wisdom across miles. Arrowhead on keychain warmed at trailheads nationwide. Offerings left on logs from Adirondacks to Ozarks. Pebble shiny or honeycomb sweet. Thank you silent for layers glimpsed. Encounters multiplied subtle. Flicker in Ozark hollies. Chime on Appalachian breeze. Thought voice in Pacific fog. Layers endless, player. Respect and the song deepens. Skepticism refined to harmony. Scalpel to flute. Miss maps to melodies respected, not dissected. The greatest hearing. Some worlds reveal in rhythm. The unseen a duet for the ear that plays along. Spring green to Midwest. Dogwoods blooming pink against budding oaks. The hum a constant undercurrent now. Sinking with birdsong and rain on roof. A call from Mark, pull me from isolation. Road trip hail? Your smoky epiphany needs field testing. Jersey Devil Redux, debunk or duet. Laughter shared. The drive east of bomb. Subaru loaded light. Fluting glove box like talisman. The pine barrens unfolded flat and sandy under April sun. Pitch pines whispering wind like warnings. The air thick with resin and salt from distant sea. Legend swirled here. The Devil's 13 children winged and hoved, haunting the bogs in 1735. Sightings clustered around Leeds Point with cries like seagulls in storm. We camped at Batstow Lake. Tent staked against cranberry bogs that bled red in sunset. Fire ring clear to pine needles sharp as accusations. Mark, evident engineer, rigged a trail cam with IR for night vision. Skepticism is hammered to my flute. If it's a crane or a kid in costume, we nail it. No ghosts, just gears. Night fell heavy. Stars smothered by canopy. The lake lapping black as ink. The hum came first. Faint. Not the Smokies' chime, but a rasp like wind through dry reeds. Layer with cries distant. Avian, but edged with something human, sorrowful. Mark snored intent. Recorder running on tripod. But I rose. Flute to lips, the melody emerging soft, sinking with the rasp into uneasy harmony. Shadows shifted low in the bogs, not devil-winged but small, fleeting. Impressions of movement too nimble for man, too curious for beast. Thought voice bloomed, not Yunwi but kin. Player from the mountains, you bring song to sands. The devil is story, but stories have teeth. Listen to the cry, not the chase. The cam caught nothing but wind sway, but morning brought prints, hoof-like but small, cloven in mud by the water's edge, melting as sun climbed. Mark dismissed as deer, but his eyes held doubt, the rasp echoing in our silence over coffee. Drove home with footage blank but ears ringing. The pine barrens layer peeled a sliver. The devil not beast but echo of loss. The flute song a key turning in locks long rusted. Summer scorched the land. Heat waves rippling over cornfields. The hum a constant companion now. Calling me west of the Ozarks where Mark's cousin ran outfitter. Legends of little people blending Cherokee with Osage. Small folk who mended with herbs and led with lights in the karst caves. Hiked the Buffalo River trails. Pack light with flute and offerings. The bluffs towering like ancient sentinels, water carving canyons green and deep. Camp by gravel bar, fire crackling under stars thick as gravel. The melody played tonight that answered with flutes of wind through bluffs, shadows small and mossy darting periphery. Thought voice warm, song travels player, layers cross waters, but respect roots all. Encounters deepened. A healer's touch and dream. Waking with old knee sprain eased. Herbs left on log in thanks. A path unspooling through sinkholes where GPS failed. Flute guide and overlooked that stole breath. Mark joined one hike. Hammer skepticism softened to curiosity. The rasp of his laugh blending with chimes on wind. You're onto something. Hail. Not proof, but presence. Like the world's got backup singers. Fall folded leaves aflame. The arrowhead glowing in pocket fireside. Sally's email summons. Hollow dances full moon. Come play the song. Drove south. Ridges welcoming like arms. The valley under harvest moon silver bright. Snow absent but frost rhyming ferns. Camped at clearing's edge. Stone ring dusted leaf. Offering scattered with story shared. Ozark whispers. Pine rasps. The player's journey. Flute to lips, melody swelling. The hum joining in chorus that filled the hollow. Young wheat sunstee emerging full from periphery. Knee-high figures bark-cloaked. Moss veils parting to reveal faces acorn-eyed and leaf-eared. Dances circling fire and steps light as thistledown. Hands clapping rhythm that sync heartbeats. Thought voices layered, individual now. Child giggle inviting spin. Elder rumble sharing lore of Nunahai wars against underworld dark. Healer songs mending rifts in earth and spirit. Join the circle tentative. Steps fumble but welcomed. Laughter tinkling bells. The night a weave of song and shadow. Layers unfolding to reveal not mystery solved, but invitation endless. Dawn parted dancers to mist. Prints tiny and dew. The path out glowing faint with residual light. Salia cabin, smile profound. You danced. The song is yours now, player. Carry it. Let it heal what chases. Drove home with melody and bones. Freelance blooming to books. Layers of listening. Folklore's portal. Podcast drawing seekers who share glimpses. The arrowhead a talisman for offerings left nationwide. Skepticism and song and harmony. Myths not conquered but conversed. The unseen a duet eternal. The greatest hearing. Worlds reveal in rhythm. Respect the player who joins a tune. Word count for part 3. 5018. This part explores Adam's ongoing journey, encounters in other regions, and a return to the valley for deeper connection. Winter's grip on the Midwest was a vice of ice and isolation. January 2026 dawning with blizzards that buried Ohio under feet of white, that muffled the world to a hush broken only by the plow's scrape and the hum's persistent whisper, now a constant undercurrent in my blood like a second pulse. The book proposal for Layers of Listening had landed a small press deal after the fall's conference buzz. Advances modest, but enough to quit the adjunct gigs that chained me to lecture halls full of yawns and essays on rational explanations for the irrational. My apartment, once a way station of maps and MREs, evolved to a sanctuary of sorts. Shelves lined with ethnographies from Navajo skinwalkers to Scottish selkies. The flute on a hook by the window where snowflakes danced to an imagined tune. The arrowhead on a cord around my neck, warming against skin like a lover's breath in cold sheets. Podcasts surge in popularity. Whispers of the unseen topping indie charts, with episodes blending my smoky revelation with guest stories. A Lakota elder on Star People Lights over prairies. A Scottish expat on Kelpie whispers and Highland burns. Each interview a thread weaving the global tapestry of layered realities. Listeners wrote in. A hiker in the Cascades glimpsing small folk, mending a fawn's leg with songs that echoed flutes. A fisherman in the bayou hearing rasps that guided his boat from gator shallows. Skeptics trolled the forums, demanding empirical data. But the faithful grew, a community of listeners who left virtual offerings and comments. Poems of respect, sketches of periphery flickers. Mark, ever the anchor, guessed in an episode on engineering the unseen, his voice crackling with reluctant wonder. Used to think it was all optics and acoustics. Now, feels like the world's got subwoofers we can't tune. The hum called south again in February, a tide pulling inexorable. Sally's email a beacon, Nunahai stir and thaw's edge. Hollow needs song for balance. Deep riffs opening. Drove through slush that turned to rain. The Subaru's wipers beating rhythm to the flute's memory. Ridges welcoming with buds piercing bark like green promises. Koala under tentative sun. The cabin smoke curling question. Sally at door with new carving. A mass of wood and moss, eyes acorn inlaid. The layer deepens, he said, ushering into stove warmth. Tea steaming bitter as truth. Nunahai, great guardians, fight dark from below. Crawlers that unbalance, devour roots. Young wheat Sunstead called players for song demand. You go but with this. The mask placed in hands, light as leap but heavy with intent. Where if riffs call, it sees the unseen. Packed with mask and flute, tobacco meal refreshed. Trailhead mud slick under melt. The path to valley a slurry that sucked boots like reluctant farewell. Camp by creek swelling with thaw, water chuckling freer. Fire ring clear of sodden leaves, offering scatter with story of podcasts. Listeners' glimpses shared as seed sown. Night fell velvet, moon gibbous silvering the hollow. The hum swelling to chorus that vibrated ribs. Chimes layered with flutes and rasps from earth. Flute answered, melody weaving duet that drew youngwe from ferns. Small forms dancing snowmelt circles. Moss cloaks parting to reveal leaf-eared faces bright-eyed. Hands clapping welcome. Thought voices blooming joy. Player returns, song stronger. The deep stirs, come men with us. Follow them to rift's edge, a fissure in the clearing's heart where earth gaped black, cold exuding like breath from grave, crawlers' whispers seeping, sibilant hungers that clawed mind with doubts, fears of isolation, failure. Mask donned, world sharpening to layers, shadow solidifying to Nunahai warriors tall as trees, bark armor and thunder voiced, battling tendrils rising slick and void black from a crack. Youngwe dance periphery, songs high and healing, flutes small as fingers piping harmony that knit the air. Join the circle, flute to lips, melody surging with airs, the mask's eyes revealing rifts as wounds in fabric, crawlers as phrase and balance. Song swelled, vibration sealing the tear, warriors' axes hewing tendrils that dissolved to smoke, the hollow sighing closure as dawn grayed east. Dance till exhaustion, youngwe fading to mist with giggles like bells, the rift scar beclosed, mask removed to ordinary wood. Sally at cabin gnawed profound. You mended. The layer thanks the player who sees wounds, not just wonders. Drove home with melody and marrow, book manuscript blooming chapters on songs of subterranean, weaving smoky chimes with global echoes, Australian Mimi spirits piping cave walls, Japanese kappa humming river bends. Spring tours followed, readings in Nashville cafes, Mark's Outfitter hosting layer walks in Ozarks where participants left offerings, glimpse flickers under guidance. Lila, no, wait, that's another tale. Here, a partner emerged in the weave, a Cherokee artist named Nia, her paintings of layered landscapes capturing periphery in oils that shifted with light, our songs blending in quiet nights, flute and voice duetting the hum to harmony. Summer scorched trails nationwide, the arrowhead guiding the hollows where little folk waited, Adirondack sprites mending with dew songs, Ozark gnomes leading through karst with light trails. Skepticism and song and eternal dance, myths not end but entrances, the unseen a chorus inviting join, the greatest melody, worlds unfold in rhythm, respect the player who harmonizes a tune.